The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, has a formula that he thinks can deliver the presidency to the Southeast region come 2023. He advises the region to throw its weight behind President Muhammadu Buhari in 2019 and then take the seat in 2023. He was speaking at a gathering with some top government officials and opinion leaders from that region in Abuja.
Let me confirm to you that for any sort of Igbo presidency, this is the shortest cut.
Thank you.
I have been in this game in the last 35, 37 years. I can attest to it. I know what it is. I know the permutations. I know what is on the ground, and I'm an election manager. I know how you can fix the figures and add them up and arrive at the destination. And I can tell you without any fear, without any iota of doubt, that the shortest cut to an Igbo presidency is for Buhari to complete his tenure and now engage the Igbo nation in a decisive manner.
It is to my interest, it's to the interest of every Igbo man for Buhari to go for second term and win second term. It's the shortest way of an Igbo man being president. And we are going to put our head on it. Anybody thinking that we'll have distraction out of this is not true. We are not going to be distracted by anybody. We are for Buhari second term, unless he himself says he will not run.
From politics to health matters now. The reported cases of death from Lassa fever has been making people find out more about the disease around the country and the need for proper medical care regarding prevention and treatment. Taking precautionary measures is paramount in curbing a further spread of Lassa fever. And this report takes a look at the disease and its vector, which thrives in dirty environments.
Mr. Rat, very invasive as a pest and very deadly. Notorious for spreading deadly diseases such as the bubonic plague in Europe in the Middle Ages, or now the outbreak of Lassa fever in Nigeria. The Mastomys species of rodent is the culprit, and it can infect humans through contact with items humans have had contact with, and secondary infection can occur from person-to-person transmission. The symptoms include fever, nausea, vomiting, sore throat, abdominal and chest pain, and hemorrhaging, neurological issues, hearing loss, and encephalitis. 2012 was the worst year for Lassa fever in Nigeria, with 70 deaths reported from 19 states. In 2018, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control has indicated 12 deaths recorded, with a caseload of 61. At least 10 health workers have been infected in 4 states: Ebonyi, Nasarawa, Kogi, and Benue. Meanwhile, Enugu state doctors have begun getting personal protective equipment against Lassa fever as they go about their duties, even as health workers across the country are advised to be cautious and the general public to be fastidious with keeping a clean environment to lower the risk of creating a habitat for the rat, which starts the chain reaction for an outbreak of the disease.
To discuss this issue, I'm being joined by Dr. Pt.2. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Center for Disease Control, and he joins us live from our studios in Abuja. Thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10.
Thanks, Melinda. It's great to be on your show.
Now, what's the situation report at the moment?
Well, the situation is, tomorrow we're going to announce a few more cases. We're at 77 confirmed cases in Nigeria, with 21 deaths. The number of cases in healthcare workers is still 10. So it's not, we have more cases, but you know, we are on top of the situation as the response is slowly catching on across the country as the message is getting across to both people, healthcare workers, and everyone infected or affected by this outbreak.
Now, how well are the cases, the Lassa fever cases being treated? How well are they being managed?
So we have a great treatment center in Nigeria. The primary treatment center is the Erua Specialist Teaching Hospital in Erua in Edo State of Nigeria. they've really developed the capacity over the last few years to really be the go-to center and really be a center of excellence, not just for Lassa, but other infectious diseases. At the same time, we're ramping up the capacity in many other centers across the country. And really our advice to centers is every state capital should have an isolation center able to manage, at least primarily manage Lassa fever cases. It's not as complicated as it may seem. So what we're doing at the moment is really supporting states to set up their centers, have the capacity, have the confidence and competence. We've developed new national guidelines that have been distributed across every state. Just this week, we're setting up a national helpline so clinicians can come in and get advice on how to manage these cases. So we're really supporting state governments and tertiary hospitals in the states, whether as a federal hospital or a state hospital. Want every state capital to identify one isolation center, and we will work with that state to ramp up their capacity and confidence to deal with these cases.
Now, I want to know the how you're working with those states, because I noticed that a lot of states are now being proactive. You said so yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So we're doing the same thing. We're asking states, basically, there are few critical items that every hospital, every tertiary hospital with the capacity to manage has to have. The first thing is to really protect the healthcare workers that are at the forefront of this. So they need to be protected with things we call PPEs, personal protective equipment, gloves, masks, that are used to manage these patients. The other critical thing is a drug we call ribavirin. It's fairly rare. So we're firstly supplying every state, every tertiary, one tertiary hospital in state capitals with at least an emergency stockpile. Throughout the weekend, we had colleagues going out from Abuja, taking supplies to the states, especially the states most affected. But we're also encouraging both states and chief medical directors of tertiary hospitals to include ribavirin in their procurement plans. We've just included ribavirin in the essential drug list so that it then enables hospitals to actually make this procurement themselves. So the role of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control is to support state governments, support our tertiary hospitals in responding. But they are actually at the front line of this response.
How are you going to ensure that everyone is on the same page, that no one is dropping the ball when you send out all these materials and try to coordinate with all the states involved?
Yeah, so that's exactly one of the things we're doing. We've developed national guidelines. It's on our website. We're making printed copies available across the country. We're really working with our colleagues to get the message out. You see, there's a lot of anxiety about a disease like Lassa. And the worst thing we want is for people to get afraid, especially healthcare workers. We had the very unfortunate and tragic loss of 10 healthcare workers, a big cluster of them in Abakaliki. I was in Abakaliki over the last week, same as the Minister of Health, to reassure our colleagues that, listen, if we do the right things, use the right equipment, we will actually be able to manage these cases. And I think generally confidence is rising across the country. You see, there's no magic bullet for Lassa fever, and that's something we all have to remember. That we don't have a vaccine, so we really have to pull together, including primary prevention, secondary prevention in healthcare facilities, and treatment of cases. The earlier we bring them into care, the better the outcomes are likely to be. So really, this is a disease that should pull the country together as we come together, as we normally do when we're faced with a crisis in Nigeria.
Thank you so much for speaking with us, Dr. Chikwe Ihekwazu. He's the CEO, National Center for Disease Control. And still talking health matters, as part of celebrations to mark his second year in office, the Kogi State Governor, Yahaya Bello, has flagged off Healthcare Plus, a scheme set up to improve the condition of expectant mothers. The event, which took place in Lokoja, the Kogi State capital, is the first of its kind in the state.
The operative word at this event is free, and that is good enough for residents of Kogi State who are here at the instance of the State Governor, Yahaya Bello. To mark his second year in office, the governor is flagging off the Bello Healthcare Plus, a package targeted at providing free maternal, delivery, antenatal, and other healthcare services.
We have invested heavily in the Confluence Advanced Medical and Diagnostic Center, Lokoja, otherwise known as CAMDIC. This ultra-modern radio diagnostic center is practically completed. When we commission it in the next couple of months, not only will our citizens no longer have to travel outside the state for their complex medical diagnosis, but we will have an influx of people visiting Kogi State to take advantage of our services.
The special guest is the Minister of Health, Professor Isaac Adewale. Commending the governor for the strides recorded, the minister encourages with the promise of rewards.
It is an investment that can earn you more money. And once you key into certain areas, you invest in maternal health, child nutrition, malaria, immunization, you get more money. So we are paying you for doing well. And so this 1.6 can even be better.
Speech is over and a new era of health services in Kogi State is unveiled. Beneficiaries also receive identification status cards. With this, it seems women in Kogi State can now look forward to safe deliveries, as the governor delivers on campaign promises.
The governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, believes President Muhammadu Buhari will seek re-election come 2019. And he's confident that his party, the All Progressive Congress APC, will not only win the presidential elections, but most of the state it currently controls. However, President Buhari's running mate in the 2011 elections and the overseer of the latter rain assembly, Pastor Tunde Bakare, says the president's right to run in 2019. He can run, but does not believe it's a good idea. Both men were speaking on our political flagship program, Sunday Politics.
Do you think the president should run in 2019?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am one of those from the beginning that have recruited, advocated, and tried to gather a group of governors, legislators, and supporters to support President Buhari for 2019 because I believe that it's in the overall interest of our party and the stability of Nigeria. And I'm confident that we're going to win the 2019 election. You remember how many people came out to welcome President Buhari in Kano. You know that there are two Nigerias. There is the Nigeria of the ordinary people, then there is the Nigeria of the elite.
It's constitutional right to run or not to run, but whether it will now be accepted the way it was accepted with tremendous goodwill in his second coming, because I think it's about to be his third coming too now. He came as military, he had come as civilian president. Jesus himself is only coming twice. No matter how you look at it, this is not the government we all hope for. This is not what we thought this government that promised change at the beginning. This is how they will perform so woefully. Is any right thinking Nigeria will agree with that? But you can then begin to do the blame game that began in the Garden of Eden. It is the woman you gave me. It is the ministers that are not performing. It is ill health. You accepting responsibility to govern a nation and to serve a people. You should be ready. They could have done better than what they have done. They themselves know that.